Hey guys, Mike here from Unchained Teacher, and today what I want to do is talk to you about 3 tips to effectively and efficiently manage your classroom. I've had a lot of questions about this recently from new teachers, so I thought I'd just jump on and share some quick tips with you on how to do that. If you haven't already, go ahead and download my free guide. It's a guide that talks about 5 things that great teachers get right. So it's 5 quick things that you can implement in your classroom this week to hopefully encourage you and to better your classroom. Hopefully take some stress off your plate and make teaching a little bit more smooth and easy for you as you go on with your year. A lot of times at the start of the year, everything's positive, and then within the first month, people feel the stress of it coming on. So go ahead and join that. I also have a public Facebook group that I'll put in the description below, where we are just helping new teachers thrive through their first year, second year, third year, something like that. So that way we can keep more teachers teaching instead of the statistic of 50% or more people leaving within 5 years. So that's my goal, is to help as many people as possible. So you can see on the screen today, I got 3 things I want to talk about, plus a little bonus there for you. The first one to effectively manage your classroom is to clearly define your expectations at the beginning of the year. You are the leader of your classroom, so what you have to do, and there's 2 different ways that I've seen it done, but what you have to do is you have to clearly tell the people that you're leading what you expect out of them. So for example, a lot of teachers, when they come into their year, they have a list of rules that they explain to their students. You don't want to come up with a huge list that's super hard to follow, but you want to be clear and concise. So for me, I talk about the only rule I have is to be respectful. That covers a lot of different things, and I kind of have them talk about what respect means. And usually they come up with things like, don't talk while somebody else is talking, be prepared when we start class, and so on. And it's a really good way just to kind of talk about what's right and what's wrong in your classroom. This could be anything, right? You get to make it up as the teacher, but it just has to work for you. The other way that I've seen it done really well is in the first week or 2 of class, you have the students come up with their classroom rules. So in each hour, a lot of times people will grab those huge poster boards, and as your tables or groups brainstorm different ideas of classroom expectations, you can kind of write those on the board, and then as a class you can vote on which ones are most important and kind of shorten your list down a little bit, and then that way you can continue to come back to those rules as the year goes on, and they made them up, so you can talk about how they should be following them. So that's step number 1. Clearly define your expectations. In my opinion, the less amount of expectations you have for them, the better. And I don't mean that you have low expectations of them, but what I'm saying is try to stay within 3 to 5 or less, so that way they don't have to remember, okay, I can't do this, can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. It's more of just like more of a blanket statement that covers a lot. For step number 2, repeat expectations daily and weekly. So I teach middle school, and at the beginning of each week, we re-go over expectations. So for me in my math class, we talk about to have routines of, when you come into class, you should have your warm-up ready to go. So we do a warm-up, and then we talk about being respectful. When somebody's talking, you're not talking, right? Or if I'm talking, you're not. Or if you're talking, I'm not. So it goes both ways, teachers and students. But just that repetitive expectation every week or every day, it really helps them get to handle things, because if you think about it, they have 6 different classes throughout the day. Then they go to after school activities, or maybe they go home, or maybe they go to work. There's just a lot of things that they are expected to remember. So spend a minute at the beginning of each week, or at the beginning of each day, just going over your expectations. So that way you remind them, this is how you act when you come into Mr. Mike's class, right? Or whatever classes are coming into. So that's a big one. Remind them what you expect out of them. And then number 3, keep your word on negative and positive consequences. So at the beginning of the year, like I said, I go over my expectations for the students. We talk about what will happen if they don't follow those expectations. So my school has a laid out plan where the first time we ask some questions of them, we use a restorative practices technique where the first time we ask them what they were doing and almost like why, so that they can kind of think about it. They can tell you what the consequences were supposed to be. And then, so that's kind of the first one. The second time, we call home, right? We talk to their parents. And then the third time, what we do is that's when we get our administration involved and we send them to our behavior room. And it's really important. I had to learn this my first couple years of teaching. I was more of a people pleaser, and I didn't feel comfortable getting kids in trouble. But what I learned over the years is that what that does is that trains kids that you are not going to keep your word, right? If you tell them that, hey, you're going to get written up, or I'm going to call your parents when you do this, this, or this, and then you don't do that, you don't follow with your word, that trains them to say, look, I can do whatever I want and I'm not going to get in trouble. And I had that happen quite a bit, and it was really frustrating, and I remember being stressed. And so by following through, right, when we follow that pattern that my school laid out, and it's probably different for yours, what you will find is that if you keep your word and call a parent, or if you keep your word and you send them down to the office, that trains them in the opposite direction now, that, hey, they're not messing around, right? They are going to do what they say they're going to do. And that's super important. And I think what it does is it helps them really get to know their boundaries, right? If you don't follow your word, there are no boundaries, and that will make your life a lot more stressful. So follow through with what you said would happen, right? When they're not following the rules. But in the same way, there are negative consequences, but there are also positive consequences, right? So my school does like good tickets, right? So if you see a student doing something positive, you give out a ticket, right? You tell them, hey, nice job, I saw you doing this. And what that ticket does is it helps buy candy or other things in the school store. So we have that system in place. A lot of schools, at least middle schools, elementary schools, do that. So if your school has something like that, great. If they don't, a lot of your students who do things well, a nice thank you, maybe you just tell it to them, right? There's not a whole lot of positive reinforcement sometimes in our schools. So just stating that verbally will go a long ways, but also maybe you write them a little note, right? Maybe you don't say anything out loud, but on a sticky note, you write, thank you for helping pick up so-and-so's books, and you put that on their desk so that they can see that you noticed, right? Without making a huge deal out of it. So again, what we're trying to do is train our students to follow our directions, and by doing that, we're teaching them that there are boundaries, and that's super important. So if you're struggling with that, like I did, there is hope, and it takes some time. But the more you practice this, the easier your classroom will get, from what I've seen personally. Okay, so those are my 3 tips. My last bonus tip is get to know your students. That seems really obvious, right? It seems very simple. But if you get to know your students, if you get to know their likes, the activities that they do, it goes a long ways. If you spend a minute asking them about their football game after school, or our musical is going on right now. So I know I have a few students in that. And it just kind of creates this bond of, okay, yes, this person is my math teacher, but he also, in a way, is asking about my life. He cares about me. And in turn, what that does is they, a lot of times, act better in your classroom, right? Because they know that somebody that they're listening to cares about them. I've also found that to help with students who are acting out in school. A lot of times, if you can get them to talk about what they're interested in, right? Maybe nobody has done that in the past. Maybe they don't have parents that do that, or teachers that do that. So if you can be that person that asks about their interests and shows interest in them, I've found that a lot of times those students start to act better in your classroom, even when other teachers are complaining about that student. You're like, well, he or she's actually pretty good in my classroom, because you have that relationship with them and you're involved in their life. Same thing goes with like going to after school events, right? So maybe you show up at a sports game or at the musical, or you see your students around town or something like that, where they get to know you more of as a person than just your teacher that's giving you boring information, right? So those are my 3 tips plus a bonus for classroom management. If you would like more help, go ahead and download that free guide that I have for you, the 5 things that great teachers get right. Hopefully that helps you at least get some practical tips that you can use in your classroom. And then also join that Facebook group. I'm trying to build a group that we can come together and we can help each other in our struggles, but also praise each other in our wins. So if that's something that interests you, go ahead and join using the link below. I hope you guys have a great rest of the night. If you have questions, please leave them below and I will get to them as soon as possible. Have a great night. Talk to you guys soon.